Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of Art of the Beholder, a show dedicated to all things eclectic in the world of art. I'm your host, Philip Church, filling in for Novo, and today we're going to be talking about art and comedy, specifically improv comedy, by interviewing the galactic sensation Winston Noel. Winston is a veteran improviser who performed on the Upright Citizens Brigade, henceforth we're going to, abbreviate to UCB, House Team, A Grandma's Ashes, and with the musical improv group Baby Wants Candy. He has starred in videos for College Humor, UCB Comedy, and Improv Everywhere, and has been a contributing writer to College Humor and Onion News Network. I know of him best as AJ2884, Emperor Nermit Bundeloy Bino, Finnifer J. Ryan, and roughly 60 other characters from the sci-fi improv comedy podcast Mission to Zyxx. When he's not doing comedy and improv, Winston gets to put his creative talents to use by doing copywriting. He's an associate creative director at a pretty cool, recognizable ad agency. And interestingly, Winston happens to have roots in Georgia, like myself. Winston, thank you so much for joining me.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Philip. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. And again, I'm so excited. I became a huge fan of Mission to Zyxx towards the end of the pandemic, and it's just been such a delight. I've listened to it so many times. So I will do my best to give all of you and improv in general, of course, like plenty of time to shine. But I'll apologize in advance if I gush a bit. Like I said, I'm a kind of a Zyxx super fan.
Oh, I love it. No, I mean, not to be like weird, but it honestly, hearing people love the show is like truly why we did it. So I'm very glad that people like it. Much better than people not liking it.
One last thing, though. Have you ever gotten the official count of the characters that you did on Mission to Zyxx?
That's a great question. And the answer is no. I don't know. I mean, I kind of got joked. I mean, everyone sort of would laugh at me because I would literally forget. I kind of, to use a phrase like mind wiped at the end of almost every episode. And so somebody from the crew will say something and I'll be like, oh, who said that? And like, you did. And I was like, oh, like, I don't remember. So no, I don't know how many people I played. But then I think Seth and Mujan, I think both gave me a run for my money towards the end of the show too.
Yeah, again, a ton of talented improvisers on the show. Everyone's so funny and so creative. It's part of why, and we'll get into a lot more of just the extra elements that made the improv and the cohesion of the team just really shine through what came to be Zyxx in all of its seasons. But again, like the heart of that show is, of course, like the improv aspect. And so let's just go ahead and get to brass tacks and talk about like what is improv. And it's, literally short, it's improvisational comedy. It's where, you make things up on the spot, right? There are multiple forms of it. Tell me, I guess, like sort of some of your highlights and just like your history, like with improv.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of funny. I was thinking about this, and it's sort of like improv began as like theater exercises. They were like theater training exercises for actors, and it wasn't actually thought of as a legitimate art form until much later. And I think that's kind of funny because it sort of parallels my kind of contact with it. I had initially done it in like theater settings. Like I took an acting conservatory where we did some improv, and I really liked it. Always liked it. And then I had a friend who was doing Second City, or was dating somebody who was doing Second City, and we did we played around, and I really liked it. But I never really could quite get around. There was an improv team at my college, and I didn't really do it because I was like very into theater. So I came to New York, and I started to where I live now, and I was starting to kind of do theater, and I went, but I was kind of like, I don't know, I wasn't really quite connecting. And then I went to a show at UCB called ASCAT 3000, and it was like a free show on Sunday nights, and you would wait in line for an hour. There was a 7:30 show that they paid for, and then a 9 o'clock show that you didn't. And somebody took me to the 9 o'clock show, and I saw it, and I was like, oh, this is what I've been wanting to do. Like, so it just clicked in my head, and I was like, however I pursue a career in comedy, it has to be through this. So I started taking classes at UCB right after that. as soon as I could get enough money to, and took the classes all the way through. Was fortunate enough to be cast on something called a Herald team,
Yeah.
which like performed on Tuesday nights at UCB, and then that Herald team I bounced around one or two. Actually, I just went over to Grandma's Ashes, and then that Herald team went on to the weekend, and then I performed on Saturday nights at UCB for 6 years.
And that was Grandma's Ashes?
That was Grandma's Ashes, yeah.
Cool.
And so did that, and then yeah, and then during that I was also doing another team called Baby Wants Candy. Kind of auditioned for that and did that kind of parallel. They were kind of more Chicago focused and not affiliated with UCB that much. So I kind of paralleled both of those at the same time.
But I would imagine, and New York really is one of the hubs. And funny enough, I'm coming to realize another comedic improv podcast that I'm enjoying now is for the past few months, I've been getting through Hello from the Magic Tavern, which you
Yes.
obviously know of. You and one of your Mission to Zyxx co-founders and main stars, Alden Ford, did a guest episode on, which I will admit, I cheated just a little bit. I was like 4 episodes behind it before realizing, like, oh no, I need to interview Winston soon. I did jump ahead a few episodes to make sure that I like understood it, because I tried it at first and I was like, I want the context. So I
Yeah.
went all the way back to episode 1 and I was like, okay, I actually really like this. So I've been getting through that. But anyways, Chicago has a cool scene, which the reason I mentioned that and got on that tangent is because that's where Magic Tavern's founders and co-hosts are from. But New York has, of course, so much theater, so much art, and again, especially stuff like, improv and comedy, like Saturday Night Live. So I'm curious about if you have any like fun, sort of niche favorite improvisers that would kind of maybe ring a bell for some people listening.
Well, I mean, I got to see. I got to see like when I went to that ASCAT, I was watching like Amy Poehler,
Oh,
Jack
nice.
McBrayer, Rachel Dratch, Jason
What?
Sudeikis, Tina Fey sometimes, like Seth Meyers, uh, John Lutz, who was like a guy that people might know from Lutz from 30 Rock,
Yeah,
is
30
like a
Rock. And
fantastic.
Jack McBrayer, if they don't immediately that like
Yes,
that's Kenneth.
yeah,
Um,
Kenneth, right. And so those guys, Scott Adsit, who played Pete on 30 Rock, was also a great improv. And then like, yeah, like Amy is amazing. There's so many, like Lennon Parham, who, if you've seen the show
that name rings
Minx,
such a bell.
yeah, if you saw her, you'd be like, oh, I know exactly who she is. She's actually around. This will be in January, but she is in the Curb Your Enthusiasm about New Year's with Larry David. That was kind of going around the internet, where he's like talking to somebody at the gym about like when's the right time to stop talking about New Year's, and she's the person he's having the conversation with. There's just so many. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on.
Just about all those names definitely ring a bell with me, but again,
Yeah,
it's almost like it was my idea to invite you here to talk about it.
that's right.
But that's awesome. I can understand going to that show and being like, this is the thing for
Oh, it
me.
just blew your hair back. It was like I couldn't believe it, and I was laughing so hard. And the reason I loved it so much was that short form is great and definitely has like a lot of fun in it. But the long form felt like it had that kind of giddy feeling when you're like having fun with your friends and you're just kind of, when you just start when you're all kind of like in somebody's
You're like
basement growing
you're like
up. And
slap happy at 2
yes,
a.m.
like it definitely has that like adding on to stuff, and you're laughing so hard. And that's what it did for me. And yeah, it's interesting because like you were saying about the SNL folks, like improv really became kind of more of an art form on its own in Chicago. Then there was some stuff going on in Los Angeles, but then Amy Poehler, Matt Besser, Matt Walsh, and Ian Roberts were the UCB four. They were like the four UCB founders, and they moved to New York and started the theater there. And so that's kind of what. And there's other stuff that was. I mean, a lot of people be like, "Well, there are other theaters going on too." Yeah, sure, that's definitely true. But like that kind of helped the scene, like that. People split up from that and formed other ones, and so Chicago's kind of the epicenter, and then New York, and then after like they did New York, this is just the new UCB kind of trajectory. The UCB4 all went to LA and opened a theater in LA. And then there was already theater in LA from Chicago, the Groundlings and IO in Chicago, or from Chicago. But so yeah, that's kind of, those are the three right now, the three kind of big epicenters of improv. And it started in Chicago, went to New York, and then, depending on who you ask, went from New York to LA.
And you kind of helped tee me up a little bit here for some different things where you did mention literally the words short form,
Yes.
and you also mentioned a herald and stuff. But even stepping back from short form and long form, just kind of give us like the nutshell version of the absolute basics, which I think one of the most, possibly the most important thing.
It's yes and is the cornerstone of improv. And then there's another one that gets kind of not bandied about as much. Yes and is the cornerstone for like getting anywhere in improv. I taught it for a long time too. I taught 101 improv for several years. And so the basic thing is like you're creating an entire world. If you're doing long form, you're creating an entire world. It's just two people and maybe a couple of chairs, and you're creating an entire world. There's no sets, there's no costumes, there's no anything. So you are constructing reality. And the only way to do that is to agree on what the reality is. So if you and I are sitting at a table and I'm like, I love this Italian restaurant, and you're like, but this is a German restaurant, like, the audience, when I said Italian restaurant, the audience saw it in their brain, right?
Hmm.
And then when you said German restaurant, Philip, you gotta yes and Philip.
Sorry about that.
It changed, right? It flipped, like, and it's
Yeah,
almost like
the imagery is destroyed. There's a weird
exactly, and it's
tension.
like, who
Like
do I
it's more
believe?
competitive, which it's not meant to be.
Right, and it's like you're telling a giant lie. And so everybody needs to get their story straight and agree with each other on what they're agreeing about. And so, you're building that reality no matter whether you're playing short form or long form, right? And to me, the big difference is like short form, it's like it's a little bit more like you're telling the audience, like, there's a game. It's a game involved, like, right? It's like you already have a few of the rules of the game and you're sort of playing within those rules. Um, and then long form is a little bit more like there are no rules. Like, there is really, the game is something, and UCB would teach this. It's the game of the scene. Like, the scene is the game, and then you find the game within the scene. You know, and so um, that game could be kind of like party quirks, or a classic short. There could kind of be elements of that there, but you have to decide what the game is with your partner, which adds a whole nother layer of, not only are you constructing the scene with one another using yes and, there has to be a moment that you're both like, we both know what this scene is about and what's funny about it, and we've agreed on what's funny about it. We haven't said that we agreed that's what's funny about it, but you and I both know, like, this scene is about the funeral director, like, being into like sub sandwiches, like too into the sub sandwich, and we're like, that's the funny part. And that's why mom and dad are mad, because like you bought a party sub, you know what I mean? Whatever it is.
And then another thing too that definitely I need to touch on, which again it's definitely kind of tricky, and hence I'm really going to lean on you for this one. But again, we've now mentioned multiple times here the difference between short form and long form. And like I said, I did a lot more of the short form because long form it can be tricky. There, again, you have to remember things. Like sometimes a callback is hilarious, but keeping track of all these various details that you and your buddies just made up. Again, like that's the whole point, is you're not doing a long like play that you've rehearsed multiple times. This is all brand new all the time, so it gets tricky. I like short form because there was like an MC.
Sure. Well, short form is Who's Line, right? So, like, if you've watched Who's Line anyway, that is short form improv done by hilarious, great improvisers, right? They're still doing something called object work, which is pantomime. They're still like always yes anding one another. All the same principles apply. It's just kind of this, um, the settings, right? And then like long form is truly like you still have help, right? You still have inspiration. It just is a little more, to be honest, arty farty, where you get like kind of a word or a phrase. We would do it with Grandma's Ashes. We had the audience submit secrets. They would write secrets in a bucket, and we would read the secrets out loud. And then we
Yeah,
do scenes
audience
based.
participation,
Yeah,
very helpful and
so
fun.
it's the same mechanism as, I need a location, I need it. But sometimes short form, you're getting a little bit of the basics down faster so you can play faster, whereas long form you kind of need to be a little more like you got to kind of fish around for it. And I totally get that it's like, especially if you're kind of if you're, I mean,
It takes practice and
it takes
dedication.
practice. And long form is like, long form, it's like if you're up there with somebody, you can't do long form, you can't do short form on your own, but you definitely can't do a long form scene if the other person's not playing ball. Do you know what I mean? Like there's just
Absolutely.
no way. Short form you can still be like, well, that person's really funny and doing everything right. The other two people aren't, and the game still kind of works. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, but long form, it's like if one of those two people or both of those people aren't listening to each other, and like only one of them is trying, it's like doesn't work. Like it
Yeah.
requires two or more people to be like fully on the same page with each other and surrender themselves to each other, which is like really difficult, especially when you're like with strangers, like when you're if you're when you're
Right.
starting in classes, you're like, I don't know these people. Like why would I?
Yeah. Everybody could be super talented, but again, finding that common thread can be very tricky. Again, and just like no person is perfect every day. So
Yes.
and, you something you touched on for just a moment there, is actually one of my notes that I wanted to even bring up is the fact that, like, okay, and that again, it's not a competition, and that there's the concept of the straight man, or again, just person, it's 2024, but like just playing it straight, if you will.
Yeah, it can definitely. There's definitely kind of a dynamic called kind of. I mean, I'll say the actual term, and then we can both agree that there's probably it's like crazy man, straight man. Like I mean, those are problematic, but like it's basically the weird person and the normal person. And like by normal, I mean the person who is in touch with our reality, like who's in touch
Mhm.
with the world, the way the world works according to what you and I and everybody in the audience knows is real life. That can be the straight man, right? Everybody else is being strange. The weird person is
Yeah,
being
these
like
premises
strange.
are crazy. Like, it's like you get a Mad Libs from the audience first in a lot of short form, and because it's a Mad Libs, again, you're balancing, okay, we're on a submarine, and yet, like, we're doing what? So, yeah, I mean, a lot of times you're given these crazy situations, and again, some of the times in my classes, when people would just, like you could almost see their eyes, like, you would kinda see them struggle for a moment, and they would just go, absolutely. It seriously could be hilarious just to see somebody agree with the most insane batshit thing that you've heard, like, all week, and that it can be fantastic.
And then the trick is figuring out how to, we would say, justify it, right? So like, why is all this happening? Just be
Yeah.
like, if we're on a submarine and everybody's eating, again, I'm going to the party sub again.
If it's like
So
a Russian yeah, if it's like a Russian sub and somehow they're eating dumplings, you're like,
they're
"Well, wait
eating
a minute, how did they get
dumplings,
dumplings? Like, where did these come
right?
from?"
But then, the justification is you start to yes and that, right? So yeah, yes, that is true, right? There's no doubt that the Russian submarine is getting dumplings.
Yeah.
No
Like,
question.
the enemy had extras, what do you
Right.
want? Like,
Exactly.
insert the
And
red
yeah,
bush,
maybe
like,
it's that's what we do here, and that's how the Russian Navy operates. We sink a sub and we we raid their
we raid their
dumplings and run,
pantries or
right?
something.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
and
or
just like
it's like,
that.
or it can be like, oh, well, Mother Russia, like this is like, the Navy only like gives us dumplings, or there can be like 70,000 different reasons for
Yeah.
it.
There's
And the
no wrong
thing
answer.
that's it. That's the thing that you kind of start
That's
to
like the best,
realize.
funnest part. Again, the yes and, like, absolutely, that's true, and here's my little addition to it, and then you're just making this, like, delicious improv sundae, like, every flavor, every topping.
And you feel safe. You feel safe that you can make those things because you haven't gotten your legs cut out from you. And when you're on a team, like what you start to do is exactly what you were saying, is you start to trust one another and you start to understand how the other person thinks. They'll still surprise you just like anybody in any relationship will,
I should
right?
hope so.
Like, yeah, and that's exciting and that's like totally the fun. Honestly, it's what I kind of say to people when I was teaching 101 and people are like, I basically said like, hey, it's okay if you don't like this. Like if you would rather like control what the other person is doing and like I'd rather them do this. It's like then you should be a writer, or you should like be a stand-up. Like part of the and that's not I never meant that in a derogatory way, but I'm just like but if you're in improv, it's like you have to delight in what somebody else is giving.
Yeah, it's not meant to be an egocentrical art. Again, it's not a competition, no one is supposed to be right or the funniest, it really is about just everybody getting along for the sake of the show. And actually, I think kind of as far as my experiences is that like short form, as you said, is more like your who's line, and short form really is more like the audience's improv, whereas long form is like the improviser's improv.
And long form, you definitely have much more of a chance of eating shit, like, and being stuck in it.
It's
And then,
scary. It was
yeah,
hard.
and then also kind of like there's times where you start to get into a little bit of a tailspin where you're like, man, none of the scenes are working because we're all starting to panic. And then we don't have the reset that short form has where it's like that game's over, move on. And so you keeps trying to swing and it just gets worse and worse. And everybody who has done improv has had like a ton of shows that way, and it feels like truly awful. Like, but the thing that I think is so wonderful about it is that it's sort of a lot of people's worst like fear is getting up on stage in
Oh,
front of
bombing
people.
in front of so
Yeah.
many
I don't
strangers.
know, and it's like I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix this, and I'm just going to eat shit for a little while, and like nobody's laughing and it sucks. And the thing about it is, I've never seen anybody die from that. And you just get back up and you're like, I mean, maybe you're like, I'll never again. But in a class, in a one-on-one class, it's like, yeah, you're gonna probably do this. You're gonna do unfunny scenes. I tell them, I'm like, you're doing unfunny scenes for a long time until you get funny. Just as like no one's expecting you to play like tennis well when you first start.
Yeah, just like any other endeavor in feat. Again, like no great athlete, no great actor, any other like painter, whatever. They don't. It's not all bangers.
Yeah, I think it's just that like kind of taking away that fear and also like, you know, who cares, right? Like
That's
who
real. You're gonna go
who
home. You're
cares?
gonna sleep. You know, like you're all
Yeah.
gonna wake up and probably go to like to work or something the next day.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
no one's gonna
You
die. Your life's
Nobody
not over.
cares. And it's like and then
No.
you see everybody else, Yeah, but those are so fun. I mean, yeah, I think they're all great.
As you mentioned a moment ago, that you obviously like you teach or have taught. How long were you performing until you transitioned into teaching? And was it more of your aspiration, or did somebody like tap you to say like, "Hey, Winston, like you've got something. Would you like to join up?" Like, tell me about
Yeah,
that sort of, I
totally.
guess, just that transition.
Yeah, I'll be honest. A lot of it, I like teaching improv, but some of it was about money. It was really the only way you could make money doing improv
Sadly,
is
art
teaching.
rarely pays.
Yes, so we did not make any money. I was never paid to perform in the 6 years I performed at UCB. Was never made a dollar doing that. I got drink tickets occasionally. Towards the end of the 6 years that we gave drink tickets. But teaching improv and coaching improv was a way to make money, and you get better, right? Because like any teacher, like you start to get better at the subject matter. The more you see it, and the more you like break it
Yeah, you
apart.
continue to learn.
Yes, exactly. And so I taught when I kind of, I think, I did classes for about a year and a half, maybe a year, and then got on a Herald team, which was pretty fast. I was really lucky in that I kind of got the right teachers. So, like, the teachers that were in the audition were teachers I had, you know, worked with before. So they all knew me and they knew what I was, what I could do. And so that I got lucky in that way. That helped. And so then I would coach some teams, and that was just sort of like you go to a rehearsal room and get paid cash and watch them do improv for a few hours and give them notes and do drills, like and one of the best part, if not the best part, is that it's like it's different every night, right? It's completely different every night, and that is also one of the hardest things to sell about. As somebody who has been involved in things where we were trying to sell improv as like a product, like nobody wants to pay for something they can't control and can't see beforehand. Do you know what I mean? Like no producer is going to be like, "Oh, I don't have any control over it. You guys just go. Sounds good to me." Like,
Right.
and they just
The opposite of a producer.
yeah, exactly. They're allergic to that. Like, there's no script. No, no, no. It's just that there's no script to go over. There's no notes to give. And it's going to be different every night. And it's like, yeah, and sometimes it's not great, And they're like, I mean, we got like with Grandma's Ashes, like the weekend teams at UCB, like part of it, you hit more than you. It was all the veteran improvisers, so it's like that ASCAT where you're hitting more than you you miss, right? Like you still have a clunker occasionally, like a scene where you're like, that didn't work. But like most of the time you can like pull it out and you're gonna get laughs. Um, but it's very hard to kind of be like, well, it's not a known quantity. It's like that's actually the fun of it. It's different every night, and you want to be like, so you could come every single night and see a different, completely different show. But like, no, but they're like, nah, no way.
Yeah.
So
It's difficult because like if someone were to go out and have a wonderful time, again, not only was there a rotating cast at the place
yeah,
that I took my classes at, so it's literally like between it always being made up, it was literally a slightly different combination night after night, and then on top of that, let's say I had a banger of a night and I'm trying to explain to my friends, well, there's almost no point
no,
because
it's
it's
like
you're
talking about
literally
a
never
dream.
going to see that exactly. You're never going to see the same thing again. It's a you had to be there kind of thing. And
Exactly.
so it is. It can be tricky to keep the doors open and the lights on,
Yeah,
but it just one thing I've just again I've always taken with me clearly is just the really like the love and respect for the profession, and it's really cool that like there are like so many famous people that you mentioned too, just between like the New York scene alone, the Chicago scene. I know that there was like of course now that I'm trying to remember I can't, something I should have researched beforehand, but like there was even some pretty cool traveling guests that came by the place in Atlanta where the Village Theater. So again, there really are some awesome opportunities. And for the people who really love it and get into it and thrive, it can take you places. And so,
yes.
like, have you like gone? Like, what are some cool places or just cool, really like fun memories and highlights
Yeah.
from your improv like career?
Well, I've gotten to travel a little bit. I mean, I've with UCB, I toured a little bit, got to go to Canada, someplace in Canada, like the New Brunswick, which I'd never been to.
Better
Uh,
than Old Brunswick.
yeah, that's right. It's so much better. It's crazy how much better it is. Don't tell them that though.
Mhm.
But
Sorry, Old Brunswick.
but Mission to Zyxx, we got to go to London, which was really cool.
Yeah.
We got to go to a bunch of different places and also meet people who were into it. And that's a little again, there was like more. It's a little more known there, right? So yeah, I mean, I've gotten to. I did stuff with Baby Wants Candy. One of the cooler things is that we got written up in the New York Times as like a like critics pick and things like that. Like, and I was pretty proud of that. I mean, UCB was like a crazy place when I was there because it was just there's so many people that are way more successful who came out of there while I was there, and it's just crazy to see people like right before they took off, or have people come back and drop in, and like that Ass Cat show I was telling you about. So yeah, it's but mainly, honestly, the highlights are kind of like the and this is so cheesy, but like the highlights are the shows where you're just like it feels like electricity and magic.
But speaking of other highlights, though, and having mentioned the just again a small handful, but then like a rough count probably of your characters. Do you have a favorite character or two? And I guess like obviously outside of like AJ, your main character from starting from season 3 to the end of the show.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite characters from Mission to Zix?
Yeah, AJ is my favorite. I think,
Because before AJ, you were all of the Clints, anyways. Which again,
yeah,
Clint, for those not listening, who again, shame on you. I've talked about this show so damn many times. Shame on you. But Clint is the is Mission to Zix's riff on a stormtrooper, if you will, cloned. It's a clone. They all wear the same armor, but they all hate each other and find each other just intolerable. So that's the fun running gag about the Clints, if you will.
yeah.
So one of them
I
made it into the main cast thanks to Winston just again finding that being one of his thriving moments. And again, AJ again just cracked me up endlessly.
Thanks. He was super fun to play. I hadn't gotten to play. I hadn't really played a lot of like dumb characters before, and I didn't improvise that way. Where I was always trying to be a real smart aleck when I improvised, and so it was really fun to play somebody stupid. And it takes some thinking to be stupid. You're like, what's the right thing to say? I'm going to say the dumb thing. But I think one of my favorite side characters is one of the first ones that I really had a blast playing was I had two. I think I really loved the governor of Milsh, who was
Yes.
like very kind of obsequious and sort of like "Ugh," like kind of like stooping and scraping, which I loved. And then I really loved playing Tarek Kasebi, which is the kind of Jabba the Hutt character that
Yeah.
I played. That was just
From
me.
the episode about the new norm.
Yes, doing like kind of nonsense Hutties. That was just sort of like throwing in actual words occasionally. That was a lot of fun.
The
And
Toyota Corolla.
yeah, exactly. So that
No,
was
I
super
love
fun.
those. One of my favorites was definitely Finnifer J. Ryan.
Oh, right,
Um,
Finiford. Yeah, he was super fun.
Finiford, again, like the whole like short memory thing of just things recurring over and over again.
Yeah,
You know what's? I will go ahead and admit this too. It like I understood that it was built. It literally is in like the description as like it's an improv comedy thing,
uh,
but at the same time, the quality of the production is so high thanks to God, now again I'm blanking again.
Shane.
Shane. I
Yeah,
was thinking Seth. I was like wrong S name, but I didn't want to find the right one apparently. Thanks to Shane's level of talent
yeah,
and skill with the sound production, it's easy to forget. It's literally just the fact that every now and again you'll catch people just laughing at each other.
right.
And that for a while too, that I realized I wasn't sticking through the credits for the blackouts where some of the bloopers and outtakes were. And
Yeah,
that's when you also get to really realize, like, no, like outside of probably just a couple of agreed upon sentences of like, here's the premise and here's where we need to get, if that's even the thing, which obviously this will be one of my questions in a little bit, but
yeah,
jumping ahead a little bit, I would forget sometimes. Like it took me a little while to realize, not that I'd forget, but like that it was that improv. And so
yeah,
again, when you and your friends are just having that time of your life, it can go anywhere. And it's just you're just along for the ride, and it's so much fun.
totally.
But looking back now that this show is sadly over, do you have any like favorite episodes per se? Like obviously, I guess you could even strike the difference between your favorite of literally like where you maybe had the most fun, but just even looking back of like where you're just the proudest of like, this is a fantastic episode. Like I love my friends.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, there was and this is so cheesy. There were so many of those. I do feel like I always had a lot of fun. I don't know how much the audience liked it, but I always loved the 19th out of the 20th episode where we decided to do something completely different. And
Yeah.
those were super fun to play because it was super fun to just like start from nothing. And again, in purely, we'd be like, okay, I think I want to be this person. We do it with the council of, the first one was the
Yeah.
council.
Based on the like the friends references too.
Yes,
That
yes.
took
And
me, took me probably again a little longer than I'd like to admit. The realizing like, wait a minute,
why,
Joey,
why,
Phoebe.
why would it even, it's such a stupid reference. Like I do not beat
Which
yourself
again,
up
there were a
about that.
ton of, which
Yes.
is one of the funny things about, especially the fact that this doesn't take place in our universe,
Yeah.
but that like, I feel like that's another fun improviser's like tool belt thing that you learn is that if you can like work in a funny little reference, again, it's just another way to slay because it makes everything come together. The audience can agree like, okay, that's funny.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like a different version of a pun, if you will, when you find a really good reference. But that was a funny one that I enjoyed outside of
Yeah.
other stuff. Like obviously there was plenty of like Jedi between like the Star Wars
Yes.
and the Star Trek
Yes.
type of references too.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. We did like kind of the Lord of the Rings one and all these different kind of
Yeah.
totally different episodes, which I thought was really fun. And then, yeah, I enjoyed the musical episode was super fun to do.
Oh
I
man,
in
yeah.
terms of like favorite episodes, like content wise, I'm not sure. I'd have to really kind of like pour through, and I don't really know. I don't really have a favorite. They're all I really like them all. I know that's kind of a cop out, but
But again, it makes sense.
yeah,
It's hard to say that because again, you've got the entire cast as
yeah,
well as Shane.
yeah,
Everybody pouring their heart into every episode. So how? I mean, yeah. How can you? And then it's a lot too. That like I don't know. Well, again, we'll talk more momentarily about like some of the planning that goes into it. But as you've mentioned too, that like it can be a terrifying experience, and it takes a lot of guts. A lot of willpower to force yourself up onto that stage that plenty of other performers like even what I think it was like even Barbara Streisand famously said like I would still be vomiting before shows, like I would be
yeah.
so nervous. And it's like but you're Barbara freaking Streisand, so
Right.
even
Doesn't
when you're
go
at
away.
whatever level of however many years, it can be nerve-wracking
Yeah,
even just
totally.
before the show. And then you get out there and you do your best for again what 30-60 minutes or something.
Yeah.
It's draining, I bet. And I'm curious what you think maybe like helps recharge your improv battery. Like
Oh, yeah.
what do you do when you're not improvising that helps you look forward to
Yeah.
improvising.
I think when I was super, super into it, like everything is fuel, like it's all, cause I mean, this is so pretentious, but like you're really like, it's everything can be used in a scene, right? Because you're creating reality. So it's like the relationships, like the way somebody talks, the like dynamics of a couple that you know what I mean? Like the specifics and specific names from your childhood that are funny or interesting, like the movie that you saw and you're like, oh, I want it to, I want to pattern it after this, or I want to use that reference. Like it really is just kind of like anything but improv. So I definitely I remember with some people, I'd be like, you watch too much improv. You need to go like live your life, um, to kind of like recharge, because like if it all is about commenting on life, and you can't just reference other improv in your improv.
Yeah, and as you said, like if improv is everything and can be anything, then technically anything and everything is also sort of the like unimprov.
Yes.
Like it's an interesting, almost like yin yang kind of thing, which again that makes sense actually.
Yeah.
Um, and having done like Mission to Zyxx, having been on Baby Wants Candy, having done stuff within UCB, um, whether you're like, I guess you can answer this more personally or more like sort of widely, if you will, but, like, what do you see as, like, success in performing improv? I mean, is it literally as simple as just, "Oh, the audience laughed tonight?" Or is it, as you've said, those, like, memories where you walk away going like, "Me and my friends are gonna be laughing about this for years." Like, what is
Yeah.
improv success to you?
I think that there are those like there's two. There's like those highlights where you're just like, "Oh my god, that scene made us laugh so hard and we were crying." Um and then there's like the other, I think, longer term success is like consistency, where you're like, I'm showing up, I'm feeling pretty good, I'm doing the right thing, I'm supporting my teammates, we're getting laughs. It's just like, because it is so variable, if you start to have like, I remember doing like a run of shows with Baby Wants Candy, and we were all getting like gelling together, and it was just like good show after good show after good show, and that to me is success, because it is such a variable art form that if you could get consistent, that's like really great.
It seems to me that again, once any person kind of dives into like, oh wow, this actor, this comedian, like all these people have improv roots and they still do it, and you start to realize like their relationships. You start to see cool behind the scenes between those actors and comedians themselves too. I feel like it starts to become apparent, at least to me, that improv is a pretty like it's an incredibly self-aware performance, comedic performance in general. And so, for instance, like in one thing too that I mentioned earlier, that even in short form, one of the games is just okay. Hey, audience, yell out a bunch of accents. We'll take 8 of them and make people do it. It can just be as funny as like just making fun of someone's accent, which like sometimes you guys would actively do to Seth during the episodes too. That like the
It's
Chimnasia
not
episode, it was
our
like,
best,
where's your accent from?
not our best,
And he'd be like,
not our best one.
I'm from down here." It's like, "I'm from the other side of the planet. It's down at," like, basically him acknowledging, like, okay, this is
Yeah,
more Australian, even though it
right.
was clearly like a British-based, like
Yeah.
A Dickensian, however you say that word,
Yes. No, I think you
tale
had it.
in
Yeah.
Chimnatius. So, like, I guess just, like, how is it, that it's because it's so self-aware, is it just mere, like, do improvisers, like, rip on themselves and other people in, like, a really like, a playful way?
I
Is
think
that
it's
just me?
play. I think it's play. I think it's like I think it's like
Because you
we
need that friendship and that bond first.
yeah,
Otherwise, it's mean.
I would never do that to Seth if I had just performed with him before, or in the confines of we're trying to find the game, and maybe the game is that this person is clearly an Australian in like a Christmas Carol. Do you know what I mean? Like what? Like you'd have to kind of, because it's bumping. The reason we called him out is because he broke through the established reality, right? Like it's like we all know that we're in Dickens thing. You clearly are not. What's going on? And so you kind of have to investigate it. Otherwise, I think you as the audience member is like, why is that guy Australian? So there's a difference between kind of like investigating something and playing with it, and seeing if that's the thing that the scene's about, or what's the funniest thing about the scene, or is that it, or just ripping on each other. But I think it's all in service of like, let's get to something funny. I think in terms of self-awareness and kind of like ripping on themselves. I think there's like an embarrassment to improv because there is that vulnerability to it. Comedians, I think stand-ups can kind of create a persona, right? I mean, I think we've seen that a lot where they can be on the defense and you can punch wherever you want to punch and like create things about you that the audience might not be true, or all this kind of, you create a character that you can kind of inhabit. And I think with improv, you're is it like there's a little like a sweatiness to it where you're just trying to make
Oh
it
yeah.
work. And so I think there's kind of an apologetic, and it gets kind of a bad rap. Um, and so I think that's to me, I think it's a bunch of people who are like too cool for theater doing theater. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, again, and like even like when you like tease each other again, like that's the thing is like it's teasing. That's not the new direction of the scene. It's
Right.
just that like you said, like there's a new game. It's
Yes.
constantly just calling out something within the world, and especially like I said, it just when there's always an audience. Again, like
Yeah.
that is just so core to this that there's no practicing, but there is always an audience. And so again, if it really is like if you know that that's like a thing, like again, you've known that friend, that teammate for however long, like it's okay to do a little bit of a tease because that's what people do. Like it's a normal thing. Just knowing that like everybody there is just fucking nuts and like they're gonna
Yeah.
carry you. It's okay.
Right. And even on like a team, there were definitely people where you're like, okay, like that's what I was saying. I hadn't really played a lot of dumb characters before Mission to Zyxx because I felt the need, whether or not it was true, to like kind of be in like there's something called editing in long form improv, which is sweeping the you run in front of the scene and it makes the scene's over. It signals to the audience that there's the scene is finished. And I was very much an editor, and like I always saw the big picture, and I was like structurally trying to get callbacks in and all that kind of stuff, and having sometimes less like goofy fun. And yeah, there kind of there's this kind of persona where there's like there are kind of three personas people talk about sometimes in improv, which is like pirate, robot, ninja. And like pirate is like the big gregarious person who's kind of hilarious and ha 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 and like big characters. And then there's the robot who's like very smart and technical. And then there's the ninja who's the person, like I would say for Mission to Zyxx, Ali Kokesh is the ninja who comes in and just like slays and then leaves, with like one line. So like there's just different kinds of things. But anyway, I think I might have lost my thread, but I think there is that feeling of like on a team, you sort of fill different roles, right? And a well balanced team is like a sports team in that you have kind of your power hitter, you have like people who can do and fulfill different roles, and then getting them all to gel. You don't want the same type. You don't want like all pirates on your team because it would just be, I mean, you can, but like it's more fun and more like textured when you have different types of performers and different types of brains.
Absolutely. And speaking of like the various sort of personas
Yeah.
and approaches to improv performances in general, though, um, surely these things, again, a lot of these skill sets will still help the various non-improv,
Yeah.
parts of somebody's life. Again, it's literally just it's recommended for so many people, whether it's just learning to be a bit vulnerable, feeling like you want to be a little bit more creative, even just meeting new people in general. But like an improv class is something that I feel like it almost stereotypically gets like thrown out there and people almost scoff at it. But it's like I genuinely feel like it is one of those things that everybody should just try,
Yes.
um, because it really can help you change the perspective on things that are the rest of your life. Like we said earlier, improv can comprise of everything, but then like everything else is also sort of like the improv. It just how you look at everything as potential fuel, or how you see everything when you're not trying to be in a scene. It helps add a little bit of color and perspective. And so pairing that with the fact that that's on the spot. Improv is new all the time. You do like copywriting. You're like you literally do things that will be practiced and need to be executed a specific way. Um, what do you feel like improv and copywriting? Like, how do you feel like those two parts of your life have kind of like danced? Like, what's the like is there like a symbiotic type of thing, or is it more of like a chicken or the egg kind of thing? Like, speak to that for me for
Yeah,
just a little
sure,
bit here.
totally. I think I am a copywriter because I do improv, or did improv. improv was such a big part of my life, and made me an effective copywriter. I was not a copywriter while I was taking those classes and doing other things. I was kind of working different jobs. Ended up sort of doing kind of random copywriter by doing like Twitter when it first started. They needed people who knew how Twitter worked, so I was one of those
Interesting.
people. Yes, that's kind of how I got into it. But I think the main thing that I'm good at as a copywriter is like, which I think is important, is being fast and not being precious, right? So like you instead of it's less to be completely honest, because like clients will have feedback. I work at an ad agency, and so I have clients that are brands and companies, and so I write something and give it to them, and then they mark it up. I first show it to people internally. I show it to my creative boss, they mark it up. I show it to the internal team, they mark it up. I show it to the client, they mark it up. I do it all again, they do it. You know what I mean? It goes through these rounds of revisions. So I definitely like am not precious. I'm just like whatever works. And I feel like that kind of whatever works mentality is definitely a part of improv. But I also feel like when I'm thinking of ideas, so that's like the writing part of copywriting. And the other part of copywriting is like coming up with ideas for campaigns and big videos and all this kind of stuff. And when I'm thinking of that, I do feel like my improv thing is like I'll be listening to the brief where they're telling us what we should be doing, and I'll start generating ideas just like instantly because my brain
Yeah.
has
You've
been
been training your
trained
brain to go through scenario A, B, C, D.
quickly.
Yeah.
Like as soon as you say the word schnitzel, be like, okay, like what are five things I can do? And so you know, it's hard to lose that training, which it's good. It's a certain set of skills, I guess, to quote Liam Neeson. But I do feel like I can just move boom, 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 and like, okay, I've got 7 ideas based off of that. Some of them are complete garbage. One of them is good, but that's all you need is one good idea.
While we're sort of talking about both, though, I've noticed that you have sort of spoken about improv in past tense.
Yeah,
I take it like at the moment you're focusing on like the actual bill paying career,
yeah,
and that like again like unfortunately again art does not always pay great.
no,
These labors of love are often done at the sacrifice of something. So I take it
yeah.
you're on a bit of a hiatus or something.
Well, I'll put it this way: like I did that team Grandma's Ashes for 6 years, and we ended it, and it felt great to end on top. When I thought we're still quite good, and everyone was upset that we were leaving or stopping, as opposed to, uh, you know, why are they still here? And then Mission to Zyxx, we ended up stopping and ending, which I'm also very proud that we did. While we still I felt like we went out on a high quality note. Improv, like a lot of the theaters during the pandemic, UCB had some financial trouble and went under, kind of, and now
Mm.
is being relaunched. And they were calling out for like Herald team auditions and all this kind of stuff. And for me, at least personally, I really had my time. I had my time in the sun. And if anybody wants to pick up basketball with me, and be like, hey, we'd love you to like perform in this show, I would do it. But I'm not like seeking it out, because I do think there's like a whole new generation of people who need to learn and get up there. Like I had my time, and I'm fine. I'd love to do it again if people, wanted me to, but I'm also not gonna like personally like seek it out as much, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely.
I
Because
love
to
it.
all
I
things a
missed it.
season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I think about that a lot too. It's like I really do. I had a wonderful time doing it. I've grown as a person since I last did improv, and I
Yeah.
even sometimes debate. I'm just like, if I'm in a place where I have that kind of time that I can commit to something on a regular basis, like should I try to get back into that?
Yeah.
Because I've met some hilarious, very fun people.
Yeah.
Some of whom again I continue to stay in touch with.
Right. I would love to do it again. I'm just trying to kind of keep it going, like keep kind of. I'm still being creative. We can talk. I know we have we'll talk maybe about some other things I've got going on, but yeah, I'm still trying to kind of follow it. And that's actually, and this is again, I feel a little pretentious, but one of the big things with improv is like follow the fun, like follow what's fun and keep going with that, and don't stop, because if you're having fun doing it, chances are the audience is enjoying it. And so I'm also trying to take that kind of more in a macro level.
No, I totally get it. I mean, I have for vast majority of my life, been more of a musician
Right.
and performer of that. And yeah, it's just same. I was just like, you know what? I literally did it for so many years and I got burnt out because I also just it like I have so many of those memories. Literally one of my few tattoos is of the band that I was in for the longest.
Yeah.
Um, and again, would I get back into it? Of course, I'm still youngish.
Right.
But no, so that makes absolute sense. And I'm sure a ton of people would be able to relate to that. Um, and so I guess it sounds like, it's like for now, there's a bit of a bookmark placed
Yeah.
in the unwritten, potentially unfinished book of Winston's Improv.
Yeah.
But to go back into the book a little bit and to
Yes.
really get my satisfaction just fully out of what I
Yeah.
can while I have the chance to talk to you, are we gonna get a chance to return to the Zyxx quadrant someday?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it would be really fun, but we'll have to see. I
I know,
can't
I wish
really I can neither I have no information on that at this time.
fair enough. I know, I wish I had found out about the podcast sooner when it was so I was a little more because I caught up by the end of it.
Yeah.
But, like, and granted, I don't know how much I really would have traveled, because unfortunately, nothing ever came to Atlanta.
Sure, I know.
But,
I was bummed
even
about
still,
that too.
I'm sure there could have been more chances to do stuff. I would have loved the chance to go to any of the shows, and it's just always looked like such fun, and I like that all the live shows, a handful of live shows were included, in the show
Oh, yeah.
just to really, again, showcase the fact that again, it's the same. Like, it feels pretty much the same as anything,
Yeah.
except there's literally 0 editing allowed because it
Right.
is live,
Yeah.
and if anything, it just speaks to Shane's talents yet again because it was like I said, like, all of a sudden, like, the most extra playing person on the show, arguably, but the most, but, like, he would just, how would he know to, like, modify your voice for
Yeah.
something,
We'd have a few
Like
kind of mics and stuff. It was pretty cool. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to do, but yeah.
yeah. The mic nerd in me loves that aspect of it, knowing that, like, again, I have a bit of a musician background and I
Yeah,
still
of
do
course.
audiobooks. I'm like, the tech part of it definitely seems fascinating. And I think that really helped me also feel a strong appreciation for
Oh,
Shane's
excellent. Yeah.
contribution to the show.
He's amazing. We love him.
Well, I hope that there's something, that I'm not a vinyl guy, or else I absolutely would have got the vinyl. So I know that that's something that's pretty fresh, fresh news from the Zyxx quadrant. But again, that's pretty much it. And, we got to talk a lot of improv talk. That's all in the past and sort of the present ish for now. Let's talk about the future for just a quick moment. What's either been something really recent, that doesn't have to be improv related, or
Yeah.
and something that's on the horizon. What's
Well,
going on with for the Clint that's the best at improvising?
thank you very much. No, I'm actually trying to. This is sort of very different from improv, but I'm actually kind of several drafts through a book. So I'm writing a book, and I'm trying to get through it. It's a fantasy kind of young adult sort of novel, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been really difficult, and it's kind of a completely different kind of set of skills than I've even in copywriting. It's long form, and so it's been really fun and kind of a new challenge. And yeah, it's been. I'm glad I'm saying it on this because it keeps me honest that I'm going to try to keep pushing forward on it.
Awesome. Well, that's definitely super exciting and
Thanks.
definitely very opposite of improv because it's planned and
It is
revised
the
again and again
exact
and again.
opposite. Yeah.
Um, any kind of tentative, like, or maybe not tentative, but like ideal, like, is it like a 2025, a
Oh
2026?
God, it's whenever somebody wants to publish it. So I don't know when that is.
Fair enough. Well, that's super exciting. I for one will keep an eye out for that.
Thank you.
So
Thanks for having me. I
hopefully, yeah, whenever that happens, hopefully we can like make a little note, and then I'll try to keep in touch that I can, like I said, no, stay in the loop about that for sure.
sounds good.
Um, and I guess like any other kind of way, um, like anything else, like that like Zix seems like it's managed somewhere and
Yeah.
the show's kind of over. Any other thing else that like people that could sort of like keep up with you at all, or
There's not really. I mean, we talked a little bit
just
about. I'm working some stuff with copywriting, but those are advertisements. But
yeah,
I'm still doing those. But I think yeah, not really. I mean, I'm on like Instagram, but I'm not really doing that much on it, to be honest with you. I don't
it's
know. Yeah.
it's bloated.
Yeah.
Social media is a lot.
Yeah. But I'm
Um,
I'm just kind of doing my thing and kind of following the fun, I think so.
Well, good. If that's what's working for you, then definitely don't stop. Um, and again, obviously, all the best with that book and any other fun projects that you just find yourself going into.
Thank you.
Um, as our listeners probably know, I am Philip Church. If you have enjoyed the sound of my voice for this long, if you're still listening, cool. My website's philipchurch.com. That's one L in Philip, please. You'll find my various audiobooks, some samples, some reviews, etc. You'll get an idea of what it's like to sort of work with me. Novo Day in general is Novo Day. That's Novode, novodayproductions.com, at underscore Novo underscore day, and at Novo Day Media on Instagram and I believe the Twitters and all the things. So, like, subscribe, please do all those good things. It helps us out a lot. If you would like to even sponsor our little love child, even be on the show, you can reach out to us at novodaymedia@gmail.com. And until next time, be good to each other. And as always, good luck and Godspeed. We love you. Art of the Beholder is brought to you by Novo Day Productions. Created and hosted by Novo Day and the Novo Day Collective. Facebook.com/Novo Day Media, at Novo Day Media on Twitter and Instagram. Music by A Company. Facebook.com/ACO Music 123. ACO on Spotify. Logo design by Tom Justice, JESTUS, of thejusticecompany.com, and executively produced by Clayton Anderson. All rights reserved.